Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. When the U.S. economy went into a tailspin in 2007 and 2008, Michigan was among the hardest hit states. Actually, the state started to lose jobs several years prior to that, and by the end of the decade, Michigan had lost over 800,000 jobs, the biggest percentage job loss in the nation. We've had a strong comeback, but where do we stand today, and what's the outlook for the future? We'll explore that subject starting right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, Chris Holman is the founder and CEO of the Michigan Business Network. For over 40 years, he's used his skills as an entrepreneur to successfully start businesses, launch magazines, run companies, serve on community boards, and host various talk shows on radio and the internet. Currently, he's the primary host on the Michigan Business Network's Business Beat program. Chris Holman is our guest this morning. Chris, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Well, Don, thanks for having me down.
Nice to have you. You know, before we get down to the business of business, let's give people a chance to get to know you a little better. Besides the things I just mentioned, I think you're an Eastern Michigan graduate?
I am. I have a couple degrees from there, actually. Went there originally to play ball because you were younger and you were surely going to be a major leaguer, right?
Okay.
And of course, that was kind of short-lived when I realized the skill level didn't match up. But it was a great education, and I'm deeply in debt to that university and have stayed close to it.
So have you been a Michigander all your life?
I have. Grew up in kind of a couple of different suburbs of Detroit. And by the way, in the 60s when I was in school, Detroit was where you went. I mean, that was just a fun place to be. And it was a social center as well as where you could go to the Fox Theater and see the Motown Review, and you know, the Red Wings were downtown. Everything was happening downtown, and it was a great city.
And it's great that there's now a renaissance in it.
It's pretty amazing. You know, I was talking to some of Dan Gilbert's people the other day, and 97% occupancy in the buildings that they're rehabbing in the core city. So many people we're re-urbanizing, and so many young people are moving down there, and technology-oriented people are moving down there to be in the middle of it, you know, and a lot of neat things are happening down there. And now people in the suburbs are coming down there for the lighting of the Christmas tree, you know, and community sings. And if you go on a given Sunday along the Riverwalk, there are families out there like crazy, and just a beautiful, beautiful setting.
I think Detroit went from almost 2 million people down to 700 and some thousand.
Yeah.
Now it's coming back.
Now it's coming back. Yeah, we're looking at a little over 800 and seeing some positive growth.
I notice you're also a grandfather, which to me is an important accomplishment.
You know, outside of being a parent, it's like your second most important job.
Right.
And it's in many ways more fun because you don't have the total responsibility. Right?
I've experienced and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You've started businesses, you've created businesses, you've run businesses. Kind of give us an overview of what experiences you've had.
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting because I said my original pursuit in life was to be a teacher and a coach, and I spent 10 years in education. Okay. And so I was a coach, a teacher, athletic director, and assistant principal. And all of a sudden I met a guy on a golf course in June, and he offered me a job to be his director of marketing and sales, and I took it thinking if I didn't like it, I'd go back to school in August, and I fell in love with business, and so that was the end of education for me.
And you've started several businesses.
I have. I was in the publishing field. I had a business magazine, and a few of them I was fortunate to sell. I have a factory in China and employees there that manufacture rugs. No export to here, but
okay.
Export to the Pacific Rim, Europe, and Turkey. I've been in a variety of things, and now this Michigan Business Network, which is all over the internet, and I was in media for a number of years too, right. About 15 all told. Did morning radio, did TV, business editor position with our CBS affiliate in the Lansing area and Channel 10. And that, you know, that media, as you know, it puts you in the middle of a lot of stuff.
Right.
I mean, a lot of information goes by you. It's like Ernie Harwell used to say, like the house by the side of the road. Everybody travels past you at some time. Right. And so that, in conjunction with business, I found was a really nice little kind of coalition, personal coalition. And so that led to a number of other things. And lately it's been about facilitating the needs of business in the state of Michigan and their need for information that can help them run more fluidly, more efficiently, and understand the marketplace around them.
And you're primarily talking about small and medium-sized businesses, which are what most of the businesses are.
Well, you talk about them because they're about 97% of the businesses. They're classified that way. And so when you do a survey, you can call it a business survey. It's primarily going to be a small and medium-sized business survey because that's who responds to the thing. And they in particular are very important to us because they are not only 97% of the businesses, but they employ about 56% of the population. So as a sum total, they are a very important economic piece. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they get facilitated and are afforded the ability to grow, which is one of the things I think that Michigan now leads the nation in as they move up the scale, is making this a more friendly, entrepreneurial, small business place to be.
You know, it's, and for our audience, you know, people may have a different perception of what business is, but I like to emphasize the point that, you know, business provides products or services we need, but they also provide employment that keep us and our families and our friends and our neighbors working.
And they purchase from other businesses. I mean, they're really the, you know, if you go in a restaurant, you've got waiters and waitresses out here, and you've got cooks back here, and there's this thing that used to be in the middle that was called a wheel, and the waitress would put her order in there and spin it around, the cooks would grab. Well, small business is that wheel. Everything passed through it, and it's important we keep that wheel greased.
Right. You do a survey every year, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. And we're back again with Chris Holman. Chris, you're in Marquette to talk to some business leaders, a meeting put on by the Lake Superior Community Partnership. And the focus of that meeting is a survey you do, and you've done it for years, and you go to some key spots around the state to talk about the survey. First of all, tell us, what is the survey?
Well, the survey is called the Michigan Future Business Index, and we've been doing it in some form or another for about 15 years. But about 6 years ago, the Accident Fund Insurance Company came to us and said, you know what, this is really vital, and it's an important barometer for people to be able to see and plan the next year, and those people are our customers. So we want to help them, so we want to underwrite this and be part of it. And they've done a marvelous job. They've been wonderful partners, so they finance the thing. And we do it every 6 months, and we do it through a company called ROI Insights. And it's the third company we've been with, but it's because we followed Paul King through his career. He's the same guy who's done it. So there's amazing consistency in it. ROI Insights is his own company. We finally talked him into going on his own. It is a barometer of not only the measure of the prior 6 months and how things have gone, but a prediction and how they feel about the next 6 months.
And these are business people you're talking to in this
These are business people we're talking about. It's very thorough. We vacillate from year to year between 400 and 800. Sometimes we've been to 1,000, so it has a high degree of accuracy. And it's very consistent, and we ask pretty much the same questions every year. Once in a while we'll throw in a few, but it's a pretty good indicator of where Michigan businesses are at, from the attitude of their CEOs, their managers, et cetera, and what they're thinking they're going to do in the next 6 months.
And I'll say going in, you have a lot of statistics, which we're not geared up to handle today, but we can talk about some of the findings. But these will be available on your website, I understand, MichiganBusinessNetwork.com.
Absolutely. If you go there, and also there's a free app if you want to go to your app store, the MichiganBusinessNetwork.com. You can put it right on your phone. Okay. And you can punch it up that way. It'll be posted, the entire thing will be posted at the end of next week.
Okay. And I think one of the things you found this year is there's still optimism, but also some uncertainty. Is that a fair?
You know, it's kind of interesting because the last few years have been pretty good optimism about the growing economy. And of course, when you're coming out of 8, 9, and 10, 2008, 9, 10, and 11, you're going to be optimistic because anything is going to be better than it was in those years, right? And so that optimism about the economy and the satisfaction with it kept going up. There is still a high degree of satisfaction with the economy in its current state and where we're going, there was like a 2% drop, and that's basically to uncertainty. And I think you see this, we're coming to the first year of a political environment that we're getting used to and learning about. You don't have legislation that's gone through yet. We're somewhat enthused about the tax breaks that are around the corner, hopefully for business, but there's still some uncertainty. And as you know, business hates uncertainty, right?
One of the things business and everyone has had to deal with is health care. And what are you finding as far as business and what's happening in Washington and Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, this whole stew of things that are happening?
It's kind of interesting because I'd like to be able to say uniformly business stood up and said Obamacare is not good, right? But you got to remember that prior to that we stood up and said the present system is not good, right? So as a former chair of the National Small Business Association, I can tell you that the board then was kind of split on how they felt about what they call Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and are still a little uncertain about it. Now, it looks like it's not going to go the way we would like it to go, and so there needs to be some tweaking. Whether it needs to be repealed or not, that's another issue. But healthcare as an issue for employers has dropped from number 2 in the last 3 years to somewhere around 6 or 7. So it's not the issue that it was, and we're not seeing the exponential growth in premiums that we saw in those years.
But aren't businesses also providing less health care?
Generally speaking, they are, and a lot of that was because they can give, in many cases, a raise to their employees and send them to the state or the federal to find their own health care. So it is true. There are fewer, and that should remain about the same.
There's a lot of talk nationally about the fact that there doesn't appear to be much wage growth in the economy. Are we finding that in Michigan?
Our wage growth is in this index has shown itself to kind of taper off about 2%. Prior to that, it was on an upswing, and there's a couple reasons for that. The main reason for that is that you have to be very competitive about jobs. You have to go out there and get people because there's a shortage of people, and you have a number of jobs in that small business community that you're not filling at this point in time. So what are the things you have to do? Healthcare might be one of them, and it doesn't necessarily mean giving healthcare. It might mean helping to finance healthcare or putting your employees in touch with healthcare. Wage increases are one of those things that come with that. And one of the things we've done nicely here is increased training. We keep putting money back into our businesses and to our people. And that helps you keep your employees as well.
I know one of the big issues is workforce, and we're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Again, we're talking this morning with Chris Holman, who is the CEO and founder of the Michigan Business Network. Let's talk about this jobs issue. There was just a report issued this week, very positive job growth in the country. Unemployment rate is down around 4.1%, which, to some people is nearing full employment.
That absolutely is.
But the big issue for so many employers is finding employees.
Yeah.
What are you finding through your survey?
Well, there's this underlying arithmetic piece. All of us baby boomers started stepping into retirement, and there were not the numbers coming in population-wise to support that loss. So from the sheer standpoint of arithmetic, you're going to have a void there, right? And you throw in a couple other things, and that is that the new workforce has to be trained in a little different fashion. We no longer have the jobs where you have someone 8 hours a day turning lug nuts onto a tire. There's a robot that does that, and the person who's watching over the robot has to have a great deal of technical education, et cetera. So the workforce has changed in their requirements, right? And when you get to 4%, most economists will say that's pretty much full employment because there's a group in there at 4% that either doesn't want to work or they don't match up, and that's one of our problems. Their skill level does not match up. And it's not as easy as saying, Don, we're going to just train these people for these jobs, because it often can't be achieved, right? So you've got that circumstance that's difficult.
I know there are companies, very successful companies in the Upper Peninsula, whose growth is being stymied by the fact they can't find qualified people.
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting because one of the things we ask is what are the greatest challenges to your business? And number one, for the last 7 of these indexes, so 3.5 years, has been people, getting people and retaining people. Because if they're good in the least, people want to steal them. And they can do it with $50 more an hour, better benefits, whatever the case may be. So there's that issue. And the number 2 issue is dealing with growth. And what they mean by that is not we're experiencing so much growth we can't deal with. What they mean by that is we can't grow because we don't have the people to fuel that, right? So now you're talking about this talent issue becoming an economic detriment. That means it's a problem. We're moving along at 1.5%. We could be maybe a full percentage point over that if we had the workforce.
Is the state doing enough to deal with the training and the things that need to be done to?
Yeah, and you know, it's not. We always look at a governor, or we look at the state legislature. What are you doing for us? What are you saving for us? Listen, the government can't do anything that puts you in an economic downspin, and it can't do anything to get you out of it. There are natural cycles that happen within the business community, and this is a natural cycle. Are they spearheading a lot of the great things? Some of the work at MEDC and the new talent division are just incredible what they're doing. They can only, do so much. And you have people like Chuck Haddon at the Michigan Manufacturers, and you have economic development companies or organizations who are doing a lot to train. But the point is that's a long-term fix, generally, because you can't train people to come to work tomorrow. You can train them in some of these skilled areas to come to work in a year or 2 years. So it's a little longer range. We have to do it. That has to be there. But there has to be some short-term fixes. And I always say, when people say, well, what are they? I always say they're things like immigration reform. We cut down the number of visas here. There are a lot of brains and good, hardworking people that want to come here and have the American lifestyle, and we don't let them in. So we've got to have some immigration reform. The other thing we've got to do is re-energize recent retirees back into the workforce. One of the reasons they left is they don't want to do 40 hours anymore. They've got grandchildren. They want a vacation. They want to kind of take it easy. So quite frankly, I introduced at the AARP.
Where you're the president.
Where I'm the president, yeah. So if you could call me Mr. President,
Certainly.
I'd feel okay. The program is called Experience for Hire, and it is designed to bring recent retirees, or even people who have retired for 10 years and want to get busy. Hire 3 of those people instead of 1 for 40 hours. Hire 3 of those people to split it up.
Good idea. We got to wrap it up. It's been good talking with you this morning, and the outlook for Michigan looks pretty good.
Yeah, everybody is pretty enthused. They really are, and we'd like to get to that 2.5%. But I'll tell you what, there's enthusiasm for the next 6 months. And thank you for having me down and the good work you do up here.
Okay, and thanks for joining us. Okay.
All right, Dan.
All right,
thank you.
I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. The recent announcement that Yonkers and Marquette would be closing is just one more reminder of the changing business landscape. Remember these names from the past? Pan American World Airways, Standard Oil, F.W. Woolworth, and Circuit City. These once giants of American business exist today only in people's memories. This morning I thought it might be fun to give you a chance to test your memory about businesses from the past. I have 5 questions to ask you, and I'll have the answers at the end. And just so you know, there are no prizes for getting them right. Let's start with an easy one. What was the name of the store in the Westwood Mall before it became Yonkers? The answer in a few moments. Next, this was the largest grocery retailer in the United States. And in fact, for a time it was the largest retailer of any kind. It was considered an American icon that, according to the Wall Street Journal, was as well known as McDonald's or Google is today. A lot of communities had one, including towns in Upper Michigan. What was the name of this grocery company? This one might be a little tougher. There was a restaurant chain that really grew in the 1940s and 50s. Many were situated on prime highway locations around the country, and each one was topped with a bright orange roof, so they could be easily recognized by travelers. By the mid-50s, there were more than 400, and at that time they also added motel units as well. What was the name of that chain? Everyone is pretty familiar with McDonald's, Burger King, and Hardee's, but for years there was another very popular hamburger chain that had more than 1,200 stores nationwide, including several in Upper Michigan. They were eventually acquired by another company and the name was retired. But can you remember the name of that popular chain? And finally, there was a restaurant chain that started in 1957, which by 1979 had over 1,100 outlets in 47 states. One was located in Marquette. Controversy over the chain's name drew protests and lawsuits in communities that viewed the name of the restaurant as racist. That, coupled with some poor corporate decision-making, eventually forced the company out of business. What was its name? So do you think you got them all? Well, the first one, the store in the mall, of course, was Prangies. They also had a big store that was a must-stop if you were shopping in Green Bay. The grocery chain was the A&P, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. The restaurant with the orange roof was Howard Johnson's. Number 4, the hamburger chain that's no longer with us was Burger Chef. And the restaurant chain that closed, at least partly because of its name, was Sambo's. How did you do? What can we learn from this? Well, you can love your favorite stores and restaurants, but just remember, one day they might be gone. There are a lot more we could add to that list, but we'll leave it at that for today. I'll be back in a minute. Time for us to wrap it up for another week. The Today Show will be here in just a moment. I do have time to remind you that if you miss our show, it is also available at uppermichigansource.com. Today's show should be available starting at noon tomorrow. Thanks to Chris Holman for joining us today for an update on Michigan business. And thank you for being here. Let's make a date to get together again next Sunday morning.